The Iron Fang Alpha thought he understood power, raw, brutal, and unquestioned, but everything he believed begins to unravel the moment he meets the one wolf who refuses to bow, refuses to shift, and refuses to become a weapon on command. Ilara Moonwhisper, the Omega cast out for her defiance, challenges not just his authority, but the very laws their world was built on. And in doing so, she forces the mighty conqueror to face a truth more dangerous than any enemy. Real strength isn't taken, it's chosen. The entire Silver Pine pack gathered beneath the full moon, waiting. They'd been waiting for 6 years. Ilara stood in the center of the ceremonial circle, barefoot on cold earth, dressed in the traditional white shift that marked coming of age. 21 years old today, the age when every wolf's connection to their beast became absolute, when shifting was no longer a struggle, but a celebration. Around her, pack members watched with expressions ranging from hope to skepticism to poorly concealed contempt. They'd all been there 6 years ago, during her first shifting ceremony at 15. They'd watched her stand in this same circle, close her eyes, reach for her wolf, and choose stillness. Ilara Moonwhisper, the pack's alpha, old now, weakened by age and recent territorial losses, spoke with forced authority. The moon goddess has blessed you with your 21st year. It is time. Show us your wolf. Claim your place in the pack. Ilara's eyes remained closed. She could feel her wolf, not dormant, not sleeping, but present, sovereign, waiting with infinite patience for Ilara's choice. You don't have to do this, her wolf whispered in the space between heartbeats. We made a pact. I remember, Ilara replied silently. She'd been 7 years old, hiding in the forest while warriors prepared for battle. She'd watched them shift, beautiful, terrible, magnificent, watched them become weapons, watched them tear into enemy wolves with savage efficiency. And she'd looked down at her small hands and made a promise. I will never let them use you for war. We are more than weapons. We are sacred. Her wolf had answered with warmth that felt like coming home. Then we are sovereign. We shift when we choose, not when commanded. 6 years of ceremonies, 6 years of refusal, 6 years of becoming the pack's shame. But Ilara had never broken her vow. Ilara, the Alpha's voice hardened, you dishonor the goddess. You dishonor this pack. Shift, now. She opened her eyes, met his gaze with calm that made him flinch. No. The word fell like a stone into still water. Gasps rippled through the crowd. Someone laughed, cruel and sharp. Others whispered, the sound building like wind through dead leaves. Broken, defective, Omega trash. Ilara stood perfectly still, her spine straight, her expression serene. Let them think her broken. Let them think her weak. It was easier to explaining that her strength lay in restraint, that her power was in choosing not to display it. The Alpha's face purpled with rage. You are cast out, no longer welcome at pack gatherings, no longer permitted to participate in hunts or ceremonies. You will live on the edges until you prove yourself worthy. I understand, Alpha. Ilara bowed her head, not in submission, but in acknowledgement. She turned and walked through the parting crowd, ignoring the insults hurled at her back, ignoring the pity, ignoring everything except the steady presence of her wolf, content and whole inside her chest. We are not broken, her wolf murmured. No, Ilara agreed. We are exactly as we should be. 3 months later, everything changed. The war band arrived at dawn, massive wolves in formation, disciplined and deadly. The Iron Fang pack from the warrior territories, led by an alpha whose reputation for conquest preceded him like a shadow. Alpha Kale Bloodstone. Silverpine's defenses crumbled within hours. Their alpha was too old, their warriors too few, their territory too poorly defended. By the time the sun reached its peak, Iron Fang banners flew over Silverpine's main hall, and Kale sat in the conquered alpha's chair, deliberating the pack's fate. Ilara watched from the edges of the crowd, her heart steady despite the chaos. This was what happened when packs valued dominance over wisdom, when they saw strength only in violence. "You have a choice," Kale said, his voice carrying absolute authority. "Integrate into Iron Fang, accept our leadership, contribute to our strength, or leave these territories forever." Most would integrate. It was logical. Iron Fang was powerful, well-organized, their alpha fierce but not needlessly cruel. But Ilara saw what others didn't, the way Kale's warriors watched the crowd with predatory assessment, how they cataloged strength, sorted wolves into useful and expendable, how they saw people as weapons. All pack members will demonstrate their combat forms. Shifting ability determines rank in Iron Fang. The stronger your wolf, the higher your position. The weaker, he let the implication hang. Around Ilara, wolves began shifting, desperate to prove themselves, desperate to survive. She remained human. Kale's eyes swept the crowd and stopped on her. Even from across the hall, she felt the weight of his attention, assessing, analyzing, measuring her worth. "You," he said, "step forward." Every instinct screamed to blend into the crowd, to disappear. Instead, Ilara walked forward with her head high, moving through the mass of shifted wolves until she stood before the new alpha. Kale Bloodstone was exactly what she'd expected. Powerfully built, radiating dominance, his dark eyes hard as flint. Scars marked his forearms, badges of countless battles. Everything about him screamed warrior, commander, conqueror. "Name," he demanded. "Ilara Moonwhisper." "Why haven't you shifted?" The hall went silent, waiting. "Because I choose not to." Kale's eyes narrowed. "Choice is irrelevant. In Iron Fang, all wolves shift on command. It's how we maintain discipline, order, strength." "Then I will not integrate into Iron Fang." Murmurs rippled through the crowd. Even Kale's warriors looked surprised. No one refused the alpha so directly. Kale stood slowly, descending from the dais to stand directly before her. He was tall enough that Ilara had to tilt her head back to maintain eye contact, but she didn't step back, didn't show fear. "You refuse integration?" His voice was dangerously soft. "I refuse to be a weapon. Every wolf is a weapon. That's our nature." "No," Ilara's voice remained calm, steady. "That's what you've been taught. But wolves are also guardians, healers, teachers. We are more than our capacity for violence." Kale stared at her like she'd spoken a foreign language. "What pack did you belong to before today?" "Silverpine, but I was cast out 3 months ago for refusing to shift." "Because you're broken." It wasn't a question. "Because I'm sovereign." The word hung between them, strange, provocative, completely at odds with pack hierarchy. Kale's jaw tightened. "You're an Omega. Omegas don't get to be sovereign." "That's where you're wrong, Alpha Bloodstone." Ilara met his gaze without flinching. "I am exactly what I choose to be. Nothing more, nothing less." For a long moment, Kale simply stared at her. She could feel him trying to make sense of her, this small Omega who showed no fear, no submission, no recognition of his authority. Finally, he spoke. "You have 3 days to demonstrate your wolf. If you refuse, you'll be exiled from these territories permanently." "I understand." "Do you?" He leaned closer, his voice dropping. "Because I don't think you understand what exile means. No pack, no protection, no home. Rogues will tear you apart within a week." "Then that's my choice to make." Cale's expression darkened, but beneath the anger, Ilara saw something else. Confusion, frustration that his dominance wasn't working the way it always had. 3 days, he repeated. "Don't waste them." He dismissed her with a gesture, returning to the business of conquest. Ilara walked away, feeling his eyes on her back the entire time. And inside her chest, her wolf stirred with interest. "He's dangerous," Ilara thought. "Yes," her wolf agreed, "but not in the way he thinks he is."
Cale couldn't stop thinking about her. It was irrational, counterproductive. She was just an Omega, broken or defiant, either way irrelevant to his purposes. And yet, that night he found himself walking the borders of the conquered territory, his wolf restless in ways it hadn't been since ever, actually. "You're distracted," his second-in-command, Marcus, observed. "The Omega?" "She's hiding something." Cale's voice was rough. "No wolf refuses to shift without reason. Either she's truly broken, or she's concealing her strength. Does it matter? In 3 days she'll be gone." It shouldn't matter. But Cale found himself changing course, heading toward the small cottage on the territory's edge where Ilara had been assigned temporary quarters. He found her in the garden behind the cottage, tending to moonflowers by lamplight. She looked up when he approached, unsurprised, as though she'd been expecting him. "Alpha Bloodstone," she returned to her flowers. "It's late for a social call." "I don't make social calls." He moved closer, studying her in the golden lamplight. She wore simple clothes, her dark hair loose around her shoulders. Nothing about her screamed power. And yet, "I want to understand you." "Why?" "Because nothing about you makes sense." He circled her slowly, a predator's assessment. "You show no fear, no submission. You refuse the one thing that would save you. Either you're the bravest wolf I've ever met, or the most foolish." "Perhaps I'm neither." Ilara's hands continued their gentle work with the flowers. "Perhaps I simply understand that some things are more important than survival." "Like what?" "Integrity, sovereignty, the right to choose who I become." Cale stopped, directly behind her, close enough to catch her scent. Moonflowers and something else, something he couldn't quite identify. "Philosophy won't protect you from rogues." "No, but it protects me from becoming something I'd hate." She turned to face him, and the movement brought them unexpectedly close, close enough that he could see gold flecks in her hazel eyes. "Tell me, Alpha, do you like what you've become, or do you just accept it because questioning would be harder than continuing?" The question hit like a physical blow. Cale's jaw tightened. "I became what I needed to be, strong, feared, capable of protecting my pack." "Through conquest?" "Through superior strength. The weak submit to the strong. That's natural order." "Is it? Or is that just what the strong tell themselves to justify domination?" "You think I'm a tyrant." "I think you're terrified." The words were soft but cutting. "I think you've built your entire identity on being the strongest, the most dominant, the most feared, and the thought that strength might look different than violence scares you more than any enemy ever could." Cale's hand shot out, catching her chin, not roughly, but firmly, forcing her to maintain eye contact. "You know nothing about me." "I know you're standing in a garden at midnight interrogating an Omega you claim doesn't matter." Her pulse fluttered beneath his touch, but her voice remained steady. I know you're trying to understand why I'm not afraid of you, and I know," she reached up slowly, wrapping her fingers around his wrist, not to pull away, but to hold his attention, "that somewhere beneath all that armor, you're questioning everything you've been taught, just like I did." Kale's breath caught. Her touch was warm, gentle, completely at odds with every interaction he'd had with wolves who either cowered or challenged. She wasn't doing either. She was just present, meeting him as an equal, despite every hierarchy that said she shouldn't. Kale released her chin and stepped back, suddenly aware of how close they'd been. 3 days, Ilara, then you leave." "I know." He turned to go, then paused. "Why moonflowers?" "Because they only bloom at night." Her smile was small, knowing. "They don't need the sun to be beautiful. They just need the moon and patience." Kale left without responding, but her words followed him all the way back to his quarters. The second day, Kale ordered combat trials. All integrated wolves would spar in shifted form, demonstrating their strength and establishing pack hierarchy. It was standard procedure after a conquest, a way of sorting useful warriors from deadweight. Ilara was required to attend. She sat on the edge of the training grounds, watching massive wolves tear into each other with controlled violence. Around her, pack members cheered or winced, invested in outcomes that would determine their new positions. Kale presided over it all from a raised platform, his expression unreadable. Their eyes met across the field. He gestured for her to approach. Ilara stood with deliberate calm and crossed the grounds. Every eye followed her, the broken Omega, the defiant one, the wolf who would be exiled tomorrow. "Last chance," Kale said when she reached him. "Shift, fight, prove yourself worthy of staying." "I am worthy exactly as I am." "You're weak. You're afraid." She said it quietly so only he could hear. "You're afraid that if I'm right, if strength can exist without dominance, then everything you've built is hollow." Kale's hands clenched on the platform railing. "You want to challenge my philosophy? Fine, but you'll do it in the arena, shifted. Prove your conviction has teeth." "No." "Then you're a coward." "I'm patient." Ilara moved closer, and the crowd's noise seemed to fade. "You think power must be displayed, must be proven through violence, but the strongest things in nature are often the quietest. Roots that hold mountains, water that shapes stone, the moon that pulls the tide without ever touching it." "Poetry." Kale's voice was rough. "That's all that is, pretty words with no substance." "Is it? Then why are you so desperate for me to shift? If I'm truly irrelevant, truly weak, why do you keep pushing? What are you afraid you'll see if I do?" Kale had no answer. Because she was right, he was desperate to see her wolf, desperate to prove she was either broken or hiding, desperate to fit her into categories he understood. Her refusal to fit was driving him mad. "Tomorrow," Kale said. "You leave tomorrow, and I'll forget you ever existed." "Will you?" Ilara's smile was sad, knowing. "I don't think so, Alpha. I think I'll haunt you, not because of what I am, but because of what I represent." "And what's that?" "The possibility that you're wrong." That night, rogues attacked. They came in force, 20 or more, organized and vicious, targeting the weakest members of the newly integrated pack. Chaos erupted across the territory. Kale shifted immediately, his massive black wolf tearing through rogues with brutal efficiency. His warriors followed his lead, a coordinated force of violence and discipline. And in the middle of it all, Ilara ran toward the screaming, not away, toward. She found a group of elderly wolves and young children trapped against a stone wall, 3 rogues closing in. They were going to die. Anyone could see that. The defenders were too far away, too engaged with their own battles. "Shift!" someone screamed at Alara. "Help them! Shift!" Alara closed her eyes, felt her wolf rise eagerly, ready to tear into the threat. "No," she whispered internally. "Not like this. We are not weapons." "Then what are we?" her wolf asked. "Guardians." Alara opened her eyes, and the moonlight answered. She didn't shift. Instead, she reached for something older, a connection to the moon itself, to the ancient power that existed before wolves learned to make war. Moon-bonded power that didn't require claws or teeth. The air around her began to shimmer. Silver light gathered at her fingertips, growing brighter, stronger. She thrust her hands forward and the light exploded outward in a protective barrier, solid as stone, bright as daylight. The rogues slammed into it and recoiled, snarling in confusion and pain. Alara held the barrier steady, her body trembling with effort. Moon bonding was rare, difficult. Most wolves never accessed it because they relied solely on their shifted forms. But Alara had spent years learning other paths to power. "Get them to safety," she shouted to the nearest defender. He stared at her in shock, then obeyed, herding the vulnerable wolves away. Alara held the barrier until they were clear, then let it drop. The rogues lunged for her. Kale intercepted them mid-leap. His wolf was massive, bigger than any she'd seen, black as midnight with amber eyes that burned like fire. He tore through the rogues with savage precision, protecting Alara's position without hesitation. When the last rogue fell or fled, Kale shifted back to human form, breathing hard, blood-spattered, and furious. "What the hell was that?" he demanded. Alara leaned against the stone wall, exhausted. Moon bonding, an older form of power, one that doesn't require shifting. "That's—" Kale stopped, his worldview visibly cracking. "That's not possible. Power comes from the wolf, from shifting, from physical dominance." "No." Alara met his eyes, and even exhausted, her gaze was steady. "Power comes from connection, to the moon, to the earth, to something larger than individual strength. Shifting is one path, but it's not the only one." Kale stared at her like she'd rewritten fundamental laws of nature. Around them, pack members were gathering, whispering, staring at the Omega who'd saved lives without becoming a weapon. "You could have shifted," Kale said quietly. "You could have fought like a warrior." "I could have," Alara pushed away from the wall on shaky legs. "But then I would have been what you needed me to be. Instead, I stayed what I am." "Which is?" "Sovereign." The word again, that same word that had confused him from the beginning. But now, watching moonlight still shimmer faintly around her exhausted form, Kale was beginning to understand what it meant. She wasn't broken. She was whole in a way he'd never considered possible. Kale found her an hour later in the moonflower garden, sitting on the ground, her head tipped back to catch the moonlight. "You're not leaving tomorrow," he said without preamble. "I'm not integrating into Ironfang either." "I know." He sat beside her, not close enough to touch, but close enough to feel her presence. "I want to understand, not as an alpha, as someone trying to learn something they should have known all along." Alara looked at him, surprised by the vulnerability in his voice. "When I was 7, she began slowly, I watched warriors prepare for battle, watched them shift and become these magnificent, terrible things, and I realized they weren't choosing to fight. They were being used, shaped into weapons and pointed at enemies." "Warriors choose to fight. Do they? Or do they just accept that fighting is what's expected?" Alara pulled her knees to her chest. "I looked at my wolf and made a promise. I would never let anyone use us that way. We would shift when we chose to, not when commanded, not to prove strength, not for war, only when it felt sacred, right, true. So you've never shifted? I've shifted. Her smile was soft. In private, in moments of joy, when it felt like celebration instead of obligation. My wolf and I, we're not master and beast, we're partners, equal, sovereign. Kale was quiet for a long moment. I've built my entire pack on the belief that visible strength maintains order, that dominance prevents chaos. And has it worked? Yes, we're the strongest pack on the continent. Are you happy? The question struck him silent. Was he happy? He'd never even considered it. Happiness wasn't the goal. Strength was. Security was. Dominance was. But happiness? I don't know, he admitted. That's the problem with building everything on dominance, Alara said gently. It's exhausting. You can never stop proving yourself, never stop being the strongest, never stop fighting, because the moment you show weakness, everything crumbles. Yes, she looked at him with something that might have been sympathy. You've made yourself into a weapon too, Kale, just in a different way than your warriors. Kale's hands clenched. I don't know how to be anything else. Then learn. She shifted slightly closer. Like I said, with patience, with choice, with the understanding that strength can be quiet, restrained, powerful precisely because it doesn't need to be displayed. You make it sound simple. It's not. It's the hardest thing I've ever done, choosing restraint when the world demands violence. But it's also made me free in ways I never could have been otherwise. Kale looked at her, really looked at her, saw the strength in her stillness, the power in her calm, the courage it took to stand before a conquering alpha and refuse to become what he demanded. Teach me, he said quietly. Alara's eyes widened. What? Teach me how to see strength the way you do, how to lead without dominance, how to be powerful without being feared. His voice roughened. Teach me how to be sovereign. For the first time since he'd met her, Alara looked uncertain, vulnerable. Why? She whispered. Because... Kale stopped, caught between honesty and self-protection. Then he chose honesty. Because when I watch you, I see something I didn't know I was missing. Peace, certainty, connection to something larger than individual power. And I want that. I want to understand it. I want... He stopped again. But Alara finished for him. You want to stop being lonely. The words hit like a physical blow. Yes, that was exactly it. Kale had spent his entire life surrounded by warriors who respected his strength but feared his wrath. He'd never had an equal, never had someone who could see past the armor to the person beneath. Until her. Yes, he admitted, I'm so tired of being alone. Alara's hand found his in the darkness, warm, small, completely unafraid. Then stop conquering, she said softly. Stop trying to dominate. Start choosing connection instead. I don't know how. I'll show you. Her fingers tightened around his. If you're willing to learn, to question, to accept that changing your mind isn't weakness, it's growth. Kale looked down at their joined hands, and something in his chest cracked open, something that had been frozen for so long he'd forgotten it could feel warmth. I'm willing, he said. And in the moonlight, surrounded by flowers that bloomed in darkness, two wolves began the slow work of redefining strength. The changes started small. Kale began questioning his own policies. Instead of demanding all wolves shift on command, he made it optional. Instead of ranking by combat prowess alone, he considered other strengths: healing, strategy, diplomacy. His warriors were confused, Some were openly hostile. But slowly the pack began to relax, to breathe, to exist as something other than a weapon pointed at the world. And through it all, Ilara was there, not leading, but guiding, showing Kale that strength could be gentle, that leadership could be service, that power was most effective when it protected rather than dominated. They spent hours together, walking the territory, discussing philosophy, debating the nature of strength. And with each conversation, each moment of proximity, something built between them. Not the mate bond, neither had felt that snap of recognition, but something deeper, more intentional. Choice. One evening, Kale found Ilara at the territory's highest point, watching the sunset paint the mountains gold and crimson. "What are you thinking about?" he asked, settling beside her. "How strange it is," she said, "that you conquered my pack, threatened to exile me, and now I'm helping you rebuild everything you thought you knew. Strange good or strange bad? Strange right." She looked at him, and the golden light caught in her eyes. Like maybe the moon goddess has a sense of humor, putting the conquering alpha and the defiant omega together and seeing what happens. "And what's happening?" Kale's voice had gone lower, rougher. "I don't know yet." Ilara's gaze dropped to his mouth, then back to his eyes. "But I think I'm starting to care what happens to you. Not as my alpha, as Kale." His breath caught. "Ilara, I know it's complicated. I know we come from completely different philosophies. I know—" Kale's hand came up to cup her face, stopping her words. "I don't care about complicated. I care that when I'm with you, I feel less like a weapon and more like a person. I care that you've shown me there's more to strength than dominance. I care that you're the first person in my entire life who's looked at me and seen someone worth teaching instead of someone to fear. Kale, I'm falling for you." The admission came out raw, honest. I didn't think I was capable of this, of wanting someone not to submit, but to stand beside me, of wanting connection more than conquest. But you've changed something fundamental in me, and She kissed him, soft and tentative at first, then deeper as his arms came around her, pulling her close. They kissed like two people discovering something they didn't know existed: tenderness without dominance, passion without possession, connection without claim. When they broke apart, both breathing hard, Ilara rested her forehead against his. "I'm falling too," she whispered, "and it terrifies me, because falling means trusting, and trusting means being vulnerable, and I've spent so long protecting myself." "Then we'll protect each other." Kale's arms tightened around her, not through dominance, through choice, through choosing each other every single day. "Is that even possible?" "I don't know." He pulled back just enough to meet her eyes. "But I want to try, if you'll let me." Ilara smiled, genuine and warm and full of hope. "I'll let you." They sat together as the sun set completely, wrapped in each other, both of them learning what it meant to be sovereign together instead of alone. The attack came from within. Marcus, Kale's second-in-command, had been growing increasingly hostile to the pack's new direction. He believed Kale was being weakened by Ilara's influence, that the mighty Iron Fang pack was becoming soft, vulnerable, weak. So he planned a coup. Simple, brutal, effective. Challenge Kale publicly, force him to fight in shifted form, prove that the old ways, dominance through violence, were still necessary. The attack came during a full moon gathering. "Alpha Kale," Marcus's voice carried across the assembled pack, "I challenge your leadership. You've grown weak, soft. You prioritize philosophy over strength, and it's destroying what Iron Fang built." Kale stood slowly, his expression neutral. "You have the right to challenge, But tell me, what makes you think I'm weak? You let an Omega who refuses to shift guide our pack's direction. You've made shifting optional. You've ranked wolves by qualities other than combat strength. You've become exactly what we conquered, soft and vulnerable. Murmurs of agreement rippled through some warriors. Kale's gaze found Ilara in the crowd. She looked worried but determined. "You're right," Kale said. And the crowd gasped. "I have changed. I've learned that strength can be quiet, that leadership is service, that dominance without wisdom is just tyranny." "Pretty words." Marcus shifted, a massive gray wolf, all muscle and rage. "But words don't win wars. Strength does. Prove you're still strong enough to lead. Shift and fight, now." Kale looked at Ilara again. She gave him the smallest nod. "Choose yourself. Choose what's right." Kale shifted. His black wolf was magnificent, larger than Marcus, more powerful, radiating absolute authority. But there was something different about him now. He moved with control instead of rage, purpose instead of brutality. The fight was brief. Kale dominated Marcus through superior skill and tactical brilliance, not through mindless violence, but through precise, controlled strikes that proved his strength without killing. When Marcus submitted, Kale shifted back. "I am still strong," he said, breathing hard, "but now my strength has purpose beyond conquest. It protects instead of dominates. It serves instead of controls. And if that makes me weak in your eyes, then challenge me again. But understand, I will win, every time, because strength paired with wisdom is unbeatable." Marcus slunk away defeated. But Kale's victory was short-lived, because in the chaos of the challenge, no one noticed the rogue attack until it was too late. They'd coordinated with Marcus, a distraction while they struck at the pack's heart, at Ilara. Kale saw it happen in horrible slow motion, 5 rogues converging on her position, her trying to call moon bonding, but too slow, too overwhelmed. His wolf screamed. He shifted and ran, faster than he'd ever moved, but he knew with sick certainty he wouldn't reach her in time. Then Ilara did something extraordinary. She stopped fighting the shift, stopped protecting her vow, and for the first time in 14 years, since making her pact at 7 years old, she let her wolf surge forward. The shift was unlike anything Kale had ever seen. Most wolves shifted in violence, bones cracking, muscles tearing and reforming. It was brutal, painful. Ilara's shift was moonlight made flesh. Silver light enveloped her, and when it cleared, her wolf stood in the center of it, pure white, luminous, marked with silver patterns that seemed to glow from within. She was smaller than average, but radiated such power that the rogues actually stopped their advance. She was beautiful, sacred, ancient, and when she moved, it was with the same grace and purpose that defined her human form, not a weapon, but a guardian. She tore through the rogues with surgical precision, protecting the pack members around her, not killing unnecessarily, just defending. When the last rogue fled, Ilara shifted back to human and collapsed. Kale caught her before she hit the ground, his heart hammering. "Ilara! Ilara, look at me!" Her eyes fluttered open, exhausted but alive. "I broke my vow. To save others, that's not breaking it, that's transcending it. My wolf," her voice cracked, "she's been waiting so long, and I finally let her. She's magnificent." Kale pulled her against his chest. "You're magnificent, both of you." Around them, the pack stared in stunned silence. The Omega, who refused to shift, had revealed power beyond anything they'd imagined. And in that moment, with Ilara in his arms, her wolf finally revealed,
both of them trembling with emotion. Kale felt it, the mate bond. Not snapping into place like the stories described, but growing, blooming, choosing to exist between two people who'd earned each other through struggle and growth and mutual transformation. "Kale," Ilara whispered, "do you feel?" "Yes." He pressed his forehead to hers. "I feel you. All of you. Finally." The bond settled between them like coming home, warm and certain and absolutely right.
6 months later, Iron Fang Pack was unrecognizable. Under Kale's transformed leadership and Ilara's guidance, they'd become something unprecedented, a pack that valued multiple forms of strength, where warriors and healers held equal rank, where shifting was sacred, not mandatory, where dominance gave way to cooperation. Other packs watched with skepticism at first, then with interest, then with envy, because Iron Fang was thriving in ways purely warrior packs never could. Ilara stood beside Kale during a territorial meeting with neighboring alphas, her white wolf present but calm, a symbol of strength through restraint. "You've changed everything we knew about pack structure," one alpha observed. "Some say you've made yourselves weak." "And what do you say?" Kale asked calmly. "I say you've redefined strength." The alpha's eyes moved to Ilara. "And that perhaps the rest of us have been too afraid to question whether our way is the only way." After the meeting, Kale found Ilara in their private garden, still tending moonflowers, still finding peace in quiet growth. "What are you thinking?" Kale asked, wrapping his arms around her from behind. "That we did it. We changed everything, not through dominance, through choice." "Sovereign," Kale murmured against her hair. "Together," Ilara corrected. And in the garden where moonflowers bloomed in darkness, two wolves who'd learned to redefine strength stood together, not as Alpha and Omega, not as conqueror and conquered, but as equals who'd chosen each other. Who'd chosen growth over certainty. Who'd chosen love over conquest. Who'd learned that the most powerful thing a wolf could do was choose restraint, choose wisdom, choose connection, choose sovereignty, not through isolation, but through partnership. The moon rose full and bright overhead, blessing what they'd built. And Ilara's white wolf and Kale's black wolf ran together through forests they no longer needed to conquer. Just protect, just love, just be.